Okay, hi everybody. I think we'll just get started now. We've got a few people online. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Robin Kingham Edwards. I'm here with Muskan Mangala, and we will be talking today about the introduction to the DNA of data sharing, comprehending the complexity of data collaboration. Uh, Next slide, Muskan. Thanks. So today's topics, we're going to be going through a bit about the DNA, discovery, negotiation, and access of data sharing. And for the discovery, I'm going to sort of just do a high level sort of theory about the understanding how a user can use metadata to understand what data is available and where to find it. Um, and we can learn some strategies to ensure users have a comprehensive understanding and easy accessibility to data assets. And the negotiation part, we'll talk about some innovative workflows designed to expedite approval requests while maintaining security measures, making data readily available in a secure environment. And the access, we will talk about gaining insights into the range of roles within the data sharing ecosystem, and their unique responsibilities in keeping data safe, secure, and accessible. We'll also explore how a user can streamline this further using the Tableon data portal and make it even easier to users making requests centrally track and requests for data. And then we'll be having a bit of a Q&A at the end. So is everyone hearing and seeing the presentation okay? Just a thumbs up if everything's going well. Thank you. Nice. Okay, so let's get started. We'll talk about discovery of data assets and so we can start the data sharing processes. We can discover and interpret data effectively through its metadata. By analyzing the descriptive metadata, users can gain insights into what the data is about, its purpose, its relevance, and its relevance to their needs. And while some metadata will be found just in the table names and descriptions and column names and in data types in each table, that's some way of the information that we need. There's probably a lot of other information available in business glossaries, and if we're lucky, they're linked back to a data source and the tables, and that would be a huge benefit. And so in some cases, that's all we have, but that's the metadata that's available and we can make use of that. In other cases, in many cases of our audience today, there might even be a metadata registry that already contains the metadata, but also needs a bit more elaboration and work. But these are the pieces of information that will help us on accessing the data and accessing the information we need. So in addition to all of the metadata, understanding the source of where it's the source database lets us get a good understanding of the data without actually gaining access to the actual data. So having all this information gives us that nice overview and get a better, educating ourselves better towards knowing what we need for the data. And by exploring the relational metadata, users can discover how related data sets are to each other, how to identify dependencies, and what may impact the analysis or the decision-making process in analyzing future data and making the requests for that data. The other side of things are metadata standards and ontologies, which can provide a common framework for organizing and describing the data. And once you start adhering to these established standards, the user can ensure the consistency and interoperability in metadata in its representation, and this facilitates the data discovery and integration processes. So having that sort of framework of standards that can be understood and attempt to follow is really important in getting that collaboration happening. So data discovery through the metadata is often an iterative process, which I've tried to allude to just now. Users may need to explore multiple metadata sources, refine their search criteria, and validate their findings through experimentation or feedback loops. And while that sounds overbearing, once you start doing that, making that exercise, you can document that information, and so you can make that a continuous improvement cycle. And through these metadata practices, it will help enhance the quality and relevance of discovering the data assets in organizations across your organizations that are sharing data. And by following the principles and practices, organizations and individuals can effectively discover and leverage data through the metadata, enabling informed decision making, knowledge discovery, and innovation across various domains and applications. So that's the power of setting aside some time in the data discovery exercise. So next we'll go on to the negotiation process, which is very important to get right and to keep working at. So the first step in the negotiation processes is to identify all the stakeholders that are involved in the approval process. And it may include data owners, data custodians, IT administrators, security professionals, and the requesting parties, of course. And each stakeholder, of course, will have a different interest and will have different interests, concerns, and priorities regarding the data access and security. And it's essential to understand the interests and concerns of each stakeholder regarding data access and security. Data owners may prioritize protecting sensitive information, while requesting parties may prioritize timely access for their operational needs. And understanding these interests, negotiators can identify potential areas of agreement and areas that may require compromise. So this is the important part of keeping that conversation going. So effective communication is key to successful negotiation. You can establish clear communication channels and protocols for stakeholders to submit access requests, express concerns, and engage in discussions and regarding the data access and security. And this may include regular meetings, email communication, or a dedicated collaboration platform. Developing clear workflows and approval processes for granting access to data while ensuring security and compliance requirements are met. Clearly defined roles and responsibilities should be set for each stakeholder involved in the approval process, including data owners, approvers, and reviewers, and consider incorporating automated tools or systems to streamline the approval process and reduce manual effort, because we all know there's a lot of time that is dedicated to this process of toing and froing, trying to work out who needs what and what the critical issues are. So the negotiation involves finding common ground and reaching mutually acceptable solutions, and facilitating collaboration between stakeholders by engaging open dialogue, active listening, and brainstorming of potential solutions. And there's obvious compromise that's needed to happen on various aspects of the approval process, such as access levels, data usage restrictions, and security measures and timeliness. And of course, in most cases, security is a crucial consideration when granting access to the data. So if we ensure that the appropriate security measures are in place to protect sensitive information from unauthorized access, disclosure, or misuse, it may include various ways of encryption, access controls, and data masking and audit trails. But we've got to have those conversations and negotiate with the stakeholders to balance the data access requirements with the security needs effectively. I've just got a few more points here. If we documenting the agreements and decisions and any changes made to the approval workflow or access permissions will help ensure the clarity, accountability, and that's among stakeholders, and will provide a reference point for future negotiations or audits. And continuously reviewing and adapting the approval workflow and security measures based on the feedback um, uh, will be it will give us the confidence in, following up on that process in the future and reviewing those engagements with stakeholders. And that will assess the effectiveness of the workflow, address any issues or concerns, and any opportunities for improvement. And by integrating the negotiation principles into workflow management for data access approval, organizations can facilitate transparent communications, collaborations, and compromise around stakeholders while ensuring data security and compliance with regulation and policy. So once we've sort of documented that, identified what's important, what security levels are required, then the approach will strike a balance between enabling data access for operational needs and mitigating the security risks effectively. So it all sort of comes down to this continual negotiating and discussions. So if we go on to the A of the DNA, is access. And there are some roles that should be involved in establishing data access to the data. The actual data owner defines, some of the roles of the data owner would be to define the data access policies and guidelines, determine who has access to the data and at what level, ensure what data access is aligned with organizational policies, regulations, and compliance requirements. They'll monitor and audit data access to ensure compliance with established policies and collaborate with custodians and security professionals to implement appropriate security measures. There's the data custodian who will manage the technical aspects of data storage, access, and security, implements access controls, encryption, and other security measures to protect the data. They'll monitor and maintain data's integrity and availability, back up the data regularly, and ensure disaster recovery plans are in place. Collaborate with data owners and security professionals to enforce data access policies and procedures. And so everybody's got these roles to ensure that policies and procedures are followed. So a data user will access data according to approved access permissions and policies. They'll use the data responsibly, ethically, adhering to all the data usage guidelines, protect the sensitive data from unauthorized access or disclosure, report any suspicious activities or security incidents related to data access, and they'll participate in training and awareness programs so they'll stay informed with the data security and best practices. And then there's one more that I've sort of identified as the compliance officer, that they'll ensure data access and sharing practices comply with relevant laws, regulations, and industry standards. They'll develop and maintain policies and procedures related to the data privacy and security, conduct regular audits and assessment to verify compliance with the regulations, and provide training and guidance to employees on data privacy and compliance requirements. So by clearly defining the roles and responsibility of each stakeholder involved in data access and sharing, organisations can establish accountability, promote collaboration, and mitigate the risks associated with unauthorised access, data breaches, or compliance violations. Effective communication and coordination among these roles are essential for maintaining data security and integrity throughout the data lifecycle. So that's sort of a big, a lot of words around all of that DNA process, but it's sort of important to sort of identify that these things should be planned out. It's an iterative process, and there are roles and responsibilities that really have to accompany this whole process. So I'll just throw over to Muskan to take us through the data request workflow and demonstrate all of this activity in Tableon. Thank you, Muskan.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. I will take the presentation from here. So how a data request, what is the workflow a data request goes through, how we access the data from an organization. To start with, a user needs to search for the data set. They need to search for what assets our organization hold and how I can request it. After searching the data sets, they need to start the formal process of requesting that data set, ensuring that they are targeting what data they need from the organization. To need that data, what they need to do is they need to submit a complete request that will contain the details regarding what is the title, what is the purpose, what variables they want to request, and that just leads into the review process. Under the review process, stakeholders will do the relevant checks and they will make sure that it aligns with the project objective and a user met data governance practices and policies and they decide to approve the project. After approval is being done, it's the main step in any part of the data request, giving the access to the user to the data environment where they can have the necessary permissions and they can use the data according to what they have requested for. After the data is being used, the final stage would be data disposal. So implement the proper data disposal protocols upon completion of the project, ensure compliance with the data retention policies and maintaining the data security as well. Each step in the workflow plays a crucial role in ensuring that data management is fulfilled and fulfilling the project requirements at the same time. So what are the different roles a user holds within a data request? It can be internal, it can be external at the same time. Starting with the researcher, so team lead or a project lead. As a project lead, user needs to hold a relevant position to access the data request. User must have the authority to add users to to a particular data request. They are responsible for the progress of the request and they can make the request in draft and they can decide when it is ready for submission. They also have a privileges to invite other users and hold the responsibility for the same. Going on, an analyst. What an analyst roles play in a data request is he is a crucial part of the data request. He is the user who would be onboarded to the data set because they have a relevant skills, they know how to analyze data, they can get the insights out of it. They can also contribute towards the responses towards the data access questions and engage with the data approvers to get their request being approved on the platform. Then comes the discussant. As a discussant in the data request, user role focus on providing valuable insights and perspective without being directly onboarded to the data set. While user can't access the data, user contribution during the discussions and meetings would be highly valued. As a team member, user can still responsible for engaging in the access request process by responding to the access questions and engaging with the approvers at the same time. Last second bit is a facilitator. Facilitator can be internal in an organization and can be the external or a part of the researcher at the same time. He is a person who is allowed to open the request on someone else's behalf. It can be a request sent to an email box said, I need the data, can you open the request on my behalf? Or a person who is busy in his daily activities asking his assistant to or a helper to open the request on his behalf. Last but not the least, a data request approver, a person who holds the responsibility of making sure the project details that has been supplied to him are accurate, it maintains the compliances, and they approve and onboard users to the data request. So this comes this comes of the finishing of the education bit. Now we would do how we can do things in Tableon. So starting from there, I just take a moment to share my screen. Yeah, this is a Tableau dashboard, and I am logged in as an administrator. Administrator is someone who holds the responsibility of managing a platform of any organization, whether it's who is seeking a process of data requests being streamlined in their organization. So the first bit I want to cover is Is Tableon a standalone product? Whether we need a Aristotle registry to get streamlined with our data request process, and our answer is no. Tableon is pretty much standalone product. We can pretty much document our data sets without having metadata being stored into the Aristotle registry. How we can do that? To start with, we need to navigate to the administrator tools, and we need to click on the data sets. And if we click on the create button, little create button over here, we can start creating our data sets in the registry. So for example, for today's activity, what I am interested in creating some training data set, and I can name it. I can add a description to my training data set, which would be, I'm just copy pasting it from my Word file so that it doesn't take much time. Tableau also helps us to decide what type of data set it is. We can pick and choose from the list itself. We can also decide who is the contact points for this data set. So for example, I'm just typing MAST as the contact points. If you have any problems, feel free to contact MAST. And how I document my distributions, how I can tell users or researchers that what data I hold within that data set. So I can add as many as distributions I want to add within that particular data set. I can name my distributions, for example, training 2022. I can also define what that distribution holds. And I can also document the variables within that distribution documents, as in what is the field name, what is the definition, and what type of data it is. So for the demo bit, I'm going to document a delivery mode, what my delivery mode is. Delivery mode is something how I'm delivering my training, and what type of data type is it? It's a code list. And I can click on save, and I can click on create, and the data set would be created in the Tableon without a hustle. So I just switched to the pre-existing ones, which I have created previously as a part of this demo. So this covers our first bit, how we can create a data set without actually having a metadata or Aristotle registry. Second thing which I want to demonstrate today is how our data request looks like. If I'm a researcher, I want to invite 3 additional teammates, whether it's a project lead, analyst, and discussants to the data request, how I can do that. Is it a complicated process? Is it like I might need to take 30-40 days to get it completed? No, it's just a simple process, which is I need to fill in the form and I pick up my variables and I submit the data request. How I can do that? I just shared my researcher account for a while. Just give me a sec. So I'm logged in as a researcher. And today I'm interested to learn how much training sessions are being run by Aristotle, for example. So this is my relevant data set, which I want to request today. I click on it, and what I can see is it has distributions, which we just created a little while ago, and I want to request this data set. So it tells me that I can't access it without having the relevant passports, which is passport B and passport A. So I know a lot of people would be thinking what passports are. So like if we are boarding a flight, that's a security document we need to show to the airport officers that I have a relevant passport to onboard that flight. So the passport in a Tableon is a security document that makes you compliant to access the data from our organization. It can be just verifying whether you hold a working with vulnerable people check, do you hold a valid driver's license in Australia, or any other security questions around that. So for example, if I want to request this training data set, there is a requirement that I need to hold certain type of passport, which I have already submitted it. So I am pretty good to go and start the access request for this data set. If I click on the start access, I can see there are some questions which I need to answer as a part of it. So for example, what is the title of my request? So my title is training project. I want to learn how many training sessions are being run by Aristotle within an year. So what is my purpose? To know about training sessions. And the system will also ask you whether you want to do as an individual request or whether you want to do it as a Teams request. Because I want to do it as a Teams request because I have like three of my teammates also want to get onboarded to the same request so that they can discuss the results and stuff. So what if I just invite my team members? I just put in their email and I can just pick and choose their email address, and I can also set what role I want them to hold as a part of that data request. So for example, project lead, and I can invite as many as people I want to this data request. The system can also ask you when you want the data to be when do you need this data by. You can pick and choose the date when you need the data by, and you're okay with it, how many you're okay with the information you have feed in. And the last bit comes in where you want to pick and choose the variables that you want as a part of the request, and I can pick and choose whatever I want as a part of request. So once I am happy with it, I can click on submit and the data request has been submitted. So I just dive into the ones which I have submitted earlier in the day. This is the data request which I have done with the with three team members, and every team members have different positions or different permissions they hold within the data request. For example, Harry holds as an analyst and Sophia is invited as a discussant. The little red tick the little green tick shows me that they have met all the conditions they need to be onboarded to the data request. And unfortunately, I haven't met it. I don't know why, but let's figure it out. On the bottom of the page, it will also tell me about that I haven't submitted the passport application B, that's the main reason I can't be onboarded to this data set. Or maybe if I want to get the onboarded to this data set, I need to submit my passport application, and that will just helps me to get on this data request. It will also tells you about what documents has been uploaded as a part of it. So for example, my colleague has uploaded a file, or a person who I invited to this data request has done a comment with the attachment that just sits as a part of the data request, which I can see in the attachment sections with what file is it and what name is, who uploaded it, and what's the size when it was uploaded. So how I approve it? I, being a researcher, can't approve it. Data approvers need to approve it. So that comes to our third bit, how a data request gets approved and how users get onboarded to the data set. So I just quickly switch to my researcher account, to my to my approvers account or administrator accounts on the registry. So I can see I can click on manage access request, where I can see all the requests that are being submitted to my organization or to my area for the approval. And I can see it's quite a backlog. If I click on a particular request, the system will hint me about how many users are there on or with this particular request, who met the requirement, who don't met the requirement as well. I can choose to approve this application. I can choose to deny this application at the same time. So if I approve this application, the application will get approved. But I can see that Muskan hasn't been, doesn't hold a relevant passport. I want to get her removed from the data request, or just want to ask her, please approve the passport. Please submit the passport application to be a part of the data request, or else we might need to remove you from the request. So I can do it from the system itself. I left under the new comment section, I can leave the comment that can facilitate the conversations with the researcher. At the same time, researcher will get the email notifications. They can come on the platform and they can start their conversation from the same at the same time. So if I go to the members tab, I can see that system will tell you who met the requirement and who don't met the requirement. I can choose to approve that person. I can choose to deny that person. So for example, Muskan hasn't met the requirements. I can remove her. I can say, because you haven't submitted the application, please, no passport application submitted. So that just removes you from the, that just denies your approval on the data request. And I can choose to onboard approve all other users. And after approving all other users, I can onboard to the data environment where the data access would be given to them. So this this comes towards our end of the demo section, demo area. I open to the questions.